So, yeah, let me just say, got it. Okay, I'm Peter Halley, Chairman of the Advisory Committee for Non-Voting Taxpayers. This is a publicly noticed meeting by Zoom pursuant to Massachusetts law. We'll conduct it just like any other meeting in that we will go through the agenda and we will take whatever votes that are called for by roll call. The meeting is being recorded, so anybody who you should just be aware of that. And if there's anything in the background that you'd rather people not see, either move it or turn off your video. I'll call on people, wait to be recognized. If any member of the public wants to speak, we'll have public comment. And as far as I'm concerned, whether or not you've been sworn in, you're a member of this committee, you just can't vote. And so we'll have a fulsome discussion with anybody who wants to contribute. And when it comes to voting, we'll take whatever the reasonable, the sworn in members' wishes are into consideration. So with that said, and did I note that we have a quorum present? There, I think, are now 6 regular members of the ACNVT in the meeting. So would anybody move to approve today's agenda?
I'd like to move to change the agenda so that we start with a discussion of the short-term rental from our representatives.
Okay, well, let's approve the agenda and then we can decide which way we'll take it. Is that okay?
No, because the agenda, the way it is shown now, shows that the discussion of short-term rental occurs after talking about the other warrant articles. So we can't approve it that way. That's the way it's been published. So we should agree to change the agenda.
Well, we've changed the agenda in the past without doing it this way, Gary. But in any event, that's motion. Is there a second for Gary's motion? Bill Gardner, you seconded it. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and there are none opposed. So we will proceed with the agenda as amended. Now let's go to the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting?
So moved.
Second? You have a second? All those in favor? Anybody opposed? No, it's unanimous. Okay, Peter Kahn, you're on. Abby, you need
this is going to be brief. This is going to be brief because we didn't have a meeting since we last were together, unless I missed it. And I don't think I did. There's a meeting scheduled for this Tuesday evening. I think the primary thing on the agenda is to hear from representatives of other communities around the country that have short-term rental arrangements. Obviously, they're all somewhat sui generis, so we'll pick up from that what arguably is and is not appropriate for Nantucket. I only saw that there were 2. I think one was Palm Desert, California, if I'm not mistaken, and there was another one.
Palm Springs, I think.
Palm Springs, okay.
Same thing.
Okay, all right. Then, were those the 2? What were those? What are the 2?
And Barnstable.
Okay, but Barnstable. Okay. I didn't realize that Barnstable had something. Barnstable, Massachusetts, I assume.
Yes, they do.
Okay, good. But I thought we were going to have more. We were supposed to have more, so I don't know whether they just couldn't get the.
They said a TBD, so we don't know if they found a third one since.
All right, and then looking at the agenda for the meeting, they just came out this, I think, Thursday, and I've been on the road. That's why you have this beautiful background. I'm in a hotel room. There will be a discussion thereafter. I think on the 28th of March, we're supposed to get the data, which we've been waiting for now since, God, what, November? And what's frustrating to me, I think, is that there's only going to be a discussion. I think they've only set aside 2 meetings for discussion of that data at most. So anyway, that will be the key. I mean, the data is going to be what's going to be interesting, and I think that once we get that data, we'll want to share that with everybody here and get your thoughts. But that's unfortunately there's not much progress here. But Kathy, do you have anything more that?
We were given a homework exercise again. I don't know if you submitted it. So that's the policy lever discussion about what if we were to adopt this policy? What would its impact be? What do you think about it? What would it fix? What would it break, sort of thing? And this particular one was a restriction of 1 STR per owner. So if you're a homeowner, you own 3 properties, you could only run one of them as a short-term rental. So that was the one that we had to fill out some paperwork on and be discussed. I have 2 other things just on another side. I don't know if you remember, but when Nantucket Together has been trying to get data from the online platforms forever, 2 years actually, and bingo, all of a sudden they figured out a way to get it to us through an independent data aggregator. So just so you know, what this does is Airbnb and VRBO and other platforms submit their data to independent data aggregators. These aggregators pull the data together, they deduplicate it, they get rid of personal information and so forth, and then they sell it to people who want to invest in properties that are short-term rentals or whatever. They aggregate all kinds of data and then they sell it. So since Airbnb and VRBO send this data, they're also able to pull down whatever they need. So I gave them the list of data elements that the short-term rental work group wants to have, just to see if they would give it to us, and they did. So I'm about to give it to, I've gotten permission to share it publicly, and I'm going to give it to the town and the short-term rental work group. They're very interested in having it. This is part of what the town has written up their procurement to go get, but it's, if we could get it for free and give it to them and they can work directly with the aggregator, that would be fine, but it's very interesting data. We've been looking at it for a couple of days just before we gave it to anybody. I'm happy to share it with this group. It's just a big Google spreadsheet, and you can go in and look on a map and see where different properties are, what kinds of properties it's several years worth of data, breaking out all the information that the short-term rental work group wants to have. So I'm happy to send a link to that. It's really interesting, like the average days that people rent their home short-term, 75 days a year. So that's a lot more than I thought. And then the average days of rental is about a week in the summer and a little bit less in the winter. But I'll caveat that in that we discovered also that any of the inns and hotels downtown that also post their rooms on Airbnb show up in this data. So that would bring the number of bedrooms and so forth down to a lower count. So we're asking them to pull that out of there because that's not a short-term rental. So there's that, and that'll go to the town and so forth, which is good. And also that the impact analysis that was done 2 years ago on the town as well as the economy, if Article 90 had been passed, is being redone by the Donahue Institute at UMass and using the Article 60 criteria instead of the Article 90. So those are just 2 things that I learned since we met last.
But Kathy, let me ask you this: Are you going to submit that data from this independent aggregator to the committee? I mean,
Yes, yes,
okay.
Absolutely. I asked if they wanted it. Both Stacy and the town wanted. So I'm going to give it to them and get out of the picture. It's not my data.
Okay, and then this other issue, this Donahue one, was this the one that there was some concern because it was funded by one of the
Yeah, it was
STR.
funded by the Alliance to Protect Nantucket's Economy, which is the Copley Group, and a number of businesses funded it. The Donahue Institute says we'll take your money, but we're going to produce the results that we find, and we don't care if you like it or not. So they claim independence. You know,
Yeah, no, I'm fine with it. I'm
Yeah.
fine with it. I know at least one member of the of the STR group won't be, but
Oh, and then the
Quick
other thing
question.
is that, I had been very concerned that the procurement that the town was going after, which was delay, which is why we don't have our data, was not going to be specific enough. It was not going to give the vendors enough information to come up with a good response, and that we were going to end up with garbage. So originally, I think you remember, Peter, they were going to let some of the short-term rental work group participate in preparing that. Because they didn't get their act together, they came to us at the last meeting. I think you remember that Stacy said, well, we don't have time. So how about we allow some subgroup members to be part of the evaluation of the vendors and in the discussions with the vendors to clarify any questions they have and so forth. So what she decided to do on her own was to appoint me and Julia to be the two representatives to look through the data, because we're such good friends. And not look through the data, but make sure that we choose the right vendor and the vendors have a full understanding of what we need. Because Brooke Moore is not capable of doing that. So I also then pushed back and suggested that she might want to appoint a third member, somebody who actually lives on the island. Whoops, you started screen sharing, Donna.
yeah.
What does that mean?
That means you're seeing something that you have in your computer. It's very beautiful. But
You
if
don't want to, you don't want to screen share, Donna.
Yeah,
I have a new computer, Peter, so I'm like, all right, so what do I go back to? I'm so sorry. Participants?
No, I think
there's
down.
a thing at the
Go ahead,
bottom. Let's see if I can stop it. I don't know if I can stop it.
Yeah, you'll see.
I'm
Stop
so
the-
sorry to interrupt the meeting. I did, stop share. I'll try that.
There we
Okay.
There you
Thank
go.
you.
Okay, that's better.
All right, so anyway, I suggested that they appoint somebody from the committee who lives on the island, because that might upset some people. There's 2 off-islanders on there. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. But we'll be able to look at the data.
Two quick questions about the data. I assume, first of all, it's only data from these online rental. It's not complete data. Is that right?
No, so real estate people will produce all the real estate data with that same information. And it will be deduplicated, depersonalized, and so forth. And then the vendor that the town hires is supposed to go find the missing piece, which is mostly this, but probably there's some more, and then combine them. So I'll be able to see it separately and combined, because it's interesting to see the online platform separately from the real estate, but then you also want to see them together. So that's what the town's going to do, is going to aggregate the aggregation.
Okay, and then the second thing is, you said it's the identification has been removed, but you can actually see the houses on a map.
You can see where the houses are. You can see what the listing name is. The listing name is not there, and the address is not there. I
but
mean, you can
pretty
figure
much
it out. You can
nail
figure
it.
it
Yeah,
out if you
okay.
want to. But
Interesting.
there's no names and there's no addresses.
Kathy and Peter, I had a quick question about the whole Article 60 thing. So that's the one where we would have to live in our house for a period of time in order to rent it. So has there been any discussion about seasonal cottages on the island that are not habitable for the entire year, and how that would impact an owner in terms of renting?
Well, in writing, at least 3 times, I've asked Stacy to please allow the group to discuss those articles, because we have been prevented from doing that.
Yeah.
I think she's under the impression that it wouldn't be acceptable, that we'd fight about it, or that that's not our job, and so forth and so on. So what I suggested we do is we need to understand what they are. We need to all understand what they are. I think it doesn't make sense for us to just put our heads in the sand and not know what's out there, because that's clearly somebody's idea of a policy lever. I thought we should evaluate them, perhaps just like we've evaluated all the other policies that we've evaluated. Use the same process. It's not controversial. We've used it before, and we'll see if she wants to do that. But I don't know about you, Peter, but I think we don't need to take a stand on them, but I think we need to understand what they mean. Because they could pass. Some of them could pass at town meeting, and then what do we do?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think the problem is that everybody is assuming that the select board will announce that they are suggesting that all this stuff not be dealt with or I guess be turned down so that our special meeting can go forward. And I think they're just sort of saying, well, that if the select board's doing that, then of course it's going to fail, and therefore we don't need to discuss it. But obviously it's a possibility, and we ought to know about it. We were talking about all these. I mean, I must say we're wasting a lot of time on a lot of hypotheticals while we're waiting for this data to come up. So why not at least have a hypothetical that's actually has some significance.
Yeah. The other thing too, is what concerns me about it, and I don't know what you think, everybody thinks, but normally the town will do something that they'll put the FinCom or the select board or all of them, they'll put some sort of opinion about, this would cost the town this, or this would benefit the town here, or this would this. So they give some context for their either approval or disapproval of any particular citizens warrant article. To just say, please don't vote on it because we want the short-term rental work group to have a chance, doesn't tell the voter very much about anything. And maybe if they're mad at the town, they're going to vote to approve it, that kind of thing. So it concerns me that they haven't put any kind of opinion in there about what, whether they think if that passed, let's say, it would be a good or bad thing for the town on any of them. They haven't done that on any of the short-term rental ones, but they've done it on all the other ones. So I don't know if they'll do anything about it, but maybe they'll just speak at town meeting.
So the
But either way, there's several of them there that they've just done the same thing. Please vote not to adopt because we want the short-term rental group to finish.
the FinCom is not, what if anything is the FinCom done with Article 60?
Nothing. They said the same, they basically have the same language. The planning board said, we vote to not adopt because of the short-term rental work group, and they've all done the exact same wording.
Do we
So it's
have,
down to the select board, that's it.
Kathy, do you have any sense of, Julia's, we had asked Julia's group to ask these people to withdraw or to hold back, and she refused, as I recall, to do that.
Yeah.
Do we have any information that they're actively working in? I would have to assume they quietly are, but do you have any sense of that?
I mean, just a letter campaign in the newspaper, which there always is. I haven't seen anything else. I mean, things will probably heat up soon as town meeting, nobody pays attention to anything really till April.
So Kathy, will the study that you're funding be ready before the town meeting?
Yes, but I'm not funding it. I don't have any money.
Whoever, the Copley Group.
The Copley Group, of course,
Yes, it will be ready before town meetings. That's what they say.
Yeah, that'll be dumped. It'll be dumped on just because it's the Copley Group, or so it's unfortunate.
Kathy, are they getting any information from, there's a website called weneedavacation.com, which just does the Cape and the Islands?
I haven't heard from them this year. Usually they would contact us, but I haven't heard from them.
I mean, I know she's been posting stuff about warrant articles and things on her website, but that is specifically a site that people who have been coming to Nantucket for years look for houses on. And a lot of those houses, at least the ones in Sconset, are just available in the summer months.
Yeah.
So have we, Gary?
A couple of comments or thoughts. First, Kathy, the aggregate data was interesting. Was that just what the aggregate data that you mentioned said was that the average short-term rental is 75 days a year. We talking strictly about Nantucket?
Yes.
And that's July and August for the most part.
Yes, and you can see it's mostly in the summer, but there's a surprising number that are actually in the shoulder seasons. So I think there's like, obviously some people who rent use their home in the summer. They might pick, August to come or July and then rent out the rest of it. So it's spread out over a longer period, but it is mostly June, July, August. And you can see that because it's broken down by month. I'll give everybody the link because it's public information now and I have permission to share it. I just got that yesterday. But you have to be aware that it's in the downtown area. It's going to have all the hotels and bed and breakfasts in it. So it's skewed that way right now because I'm asking them to remove it and they give you a link. And so, for example, when they first sent the link, it had people's names in it. And I said, no, you have to take that out. And now that link, that same link, the names are out. So even if they fix it, that link that I send out will still be good. They'll just remove the data that's not relevant. 'Cause I don't think the town would count those as short-term rentals, right? If it's in a hotel or an inn,
Shouldn't
just
be.
because they use Airbnb to sell it. It's not a
Well,
short-term
what
rental.
this suggests with the 75 days a year, and I'm not a tax lawyer or a tax professional, but my recollection of the US tax code is that if you have a second home, you can deal with it in certain ways, but you can't use it more than 15 days a year. Isn't that sort of the way it
No.
works?
14.
Can't rent out with them.
Yeah, this may be tax code driven, that people want their, either it's a business for them or it's an aspirational future place that they may use more frequently, but this tax, whatever the tax breaks are very valuable to them, and so they abide by the rules.
Yeah, so there, you'll be able to see all of that when you look at it. I'm trying to think of there was anything else that was surprising. The number of bedrooms on average is 3.5 bedrooms, but I think it's probably really 4. If you take out all the bed and breakfasts, that's just a guess. I don't know because I can't see the data below it. Just they summarized all the data the way the short-term rental work group said they wanted to see it. So that's the way it is. It's got revenues and which I don't know how those numbers are calculated. Is that the revenue to like Airbnb and VRBO? Is that the revenue to the client? I don't know those answers. We've asked. I'm trying to think of what else is in there that's interesting. Oh, it includes Tuckernuck, by the way. That's part of Nantucket. So just in case you wanted to know if you could rent a place on Tuckernuck. But it's just interesting to look at over time and see and you can see it over the pandemic. It's got about 1,300 homes in it right now.
What is the time period covered?
I think it's 2020 through 2020. Actually has some data up through 2023, and they count active rentals as a home that's in their listing that actually rented during the time frame that they're looking at. So it's not counted as active. So you can see the numbers go up and down a little bit, but it's pretty much been 1,300 homes for the past 3 years.
Yeah, although it might, given COVID, it might skew higher than normal. I mean,
Actually, it skewed down. I think people came and used their homes more than rented them.
Interesting.
Gary, you had
I had two more comments. The second comment is really just a little thing I'd like to share, a little bit of humor. Years ago, I was talking with a famous trust and estate lawyer, and we were talking about his practice, and we said, well, you're very busy, but once people die, they die. That's the end, right? He said, no, that's not the end. That's just the beginning of the estate litigation.
Yeah.
And that, Kathy, is the answer to your question, is what happens if Section 60, if Article 60 passes. It's not the end of anything, it's just the beginning of litigation, because all of the people who will be adversely affected by it will obviously resort to the courts.
Yes. And speaking of litigation, there is a new lawsuit. So the Keith family up on the cliff has been sued by the Quick family. This time not also citing that it's commercial use of a residential property, but challenging that it's the town to prove that it's legal to operate a short-term rental in an R1 zone, because that's an R1 zone. So they've added another legal challenge. So that one is now going to the land court as well.
That's the one where, if I recall correctly, Quick rented from these people initially, right?
Yeah, he short-term rented their home for years, and then the owner subdivided his property and sold a lot to this guy who's now his neighbor, and now he's suing him. So isn't that great?
It gets close to the definition of chutzpah.
no unclean hands defense.
Yeah, no good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah, and the guy's 85 years old. It's just.
The defendant is 85.
The owner and his wife were 85.
Yeah, the
and
one
he
who's
used to
being
live
sued.
on the island. He actually spent a time in the Nantucket schools. His mother owned several properties. It's awful. It's awful.
Yeah. Okay,
Third comment, Peter, is, are we as a committee going to support the recommendations of the Finance Committee and hopefully the Select Board to suggest to the people at the annual town meeting that they should wait for the short-term rental working group to come up with its proposal? Is there something we should be doing either now or before the meeting to at least provide support for don't approve anything now, folks. Let the short-term working group come up with something in the fall.
I'm embarrassed to say my short-term memory is not all that great, but didn't I already do this? I think
I think while you were out, Gary.
Several,
We did it.
yeah, while you were out, we took a vote to use that, not act or whatever it is, language that seemed to be the popular language on I think all of the short-term rental proposals, not just Article 60.
Okay, I was probably under anesthesia at the time.
Yeah, well, it could
Yes.
be. And I feel like I've been under anesthesia because I can't remember exactly when or what it was, but it was, we commented on two things. And that was done quite some time ago. And maybe Kathy, I can't remember whether I'm sure I can find whatever it was that I sent, but probably it should be incorporated in the minutes as to show what we've done in the.
I'll go
public.
back and look. I think I have the letter here. It was sent out on February 3rd.
Well, is there a way we should address the actual annual town meeting, either if none of us is able to be there to participate, should we ask the moderator to say, by the way, this is, I don't know if she'll do it, by the way, this is a recommendation of our committee as well?
Well, why don't we do this when we at a meeting, let's say in April, sometime in April, a month before the annual town meeting, why don't we sort of look and see if anybody can attend or is planning to attend that meeting, and then look at the positions that we've taken officially with the select board. And then if nobody can attend, or if somebody can attend, figure out what should be said and by whom. And then, we'll appoint a person if somebody can actually attend and is willing to do this. I've done it on one occasion. I think Kathy's done it on one occasion. Although it may be that it was the same occasion, actually, I believe. Yeah,
we froze together.
yeah, God, it was when they were holding it outside during the pandemic in the tents, and there was a cool breeze blowing over the thing. And I certainly wasn't dressed well. One of the local residents lent me a sweatshirt to put on, which I was very thankful for. But and I think we also have to, maybe put our finger in the air and say, is saying something going to be helpful or detrimental? You never can tell, and that'll require our collective judgment.
And I think one thing for sure, though, is that neither Kathy nor I should participate. As represent, because we're on the STR group. I mean, I think somebody, Peter, you're the likely candidate, and it may be let's worry about it. Obviously, as you say, closer to April, and that may happen. But
Yeah, I think, is it May 2nd? Is that the
yeah,
meeting?
it's the first weekend. It's the first weekend in May.
Yeah, I know I'm going to be in Europe, but I'm not sure. I'll probably leave right after May 2nd. So
It's May
I've done it
6th.
before.
It's the weekend after Daffy. It's May 6th.
Yeah, I'm going up for Daffy, if nothing prevents me from doing it. And so maybe I just stay or not. I'm not sure. Anyway, I will tell you, it was not a fulfilling experience the last time around. And, but, if duty calls, I will do it if it's otherwise not trotting on something else. But
Remember last year when I spoke, they misrepresented it in this CVB. They had my picture, on television underneath the scroller underneath was talking about the topless beaches. And my son saw
Well,
that. It's like,
you were a
"Mom,
winner.
what are
You
you
were a
doing?"
winner. You were a winner. You were
I
a winner.
know.
Yeah, what was our position on that? Wear sunglasses? Okay, so let's move on because there's a lot of snow on the ground and I would like to get out to it. I think we're finished with the SDR. Thank you very much, both Peter and Kathy, for bringing us up to date. Feel like we're more part of the process. Just to crystallize, Kathy, you are going to send around a link to that data so that we can take a look at it ourselves and enjoy it or not, as the case may be. Great. So let's turn to warrant article 76, the outdoor lighting bylaw. We were at the verge of voting for it when one of the members suggested maybe we ought to read the revised version first and before doing that. And I certainly have done that, and I have some comments. But does somebody want to move to approve or not approve? Take action, take no action on outdoor lighting, Article 76. Kathy.
I move to approve the revised version.
Okay, is there a second? Bill Gardner, second. Okay, and discussion. Is there any discussion? Gary.
Yes, I've read the articles again, and I haven't changed my views that this is unnecessary and burdensome regulation that Nantucket does not need. I don't think it's a major issue for the non-voting taxpayers on the island of Nantucket. I think putting in a series of regulations, I mean, it starts talking about a luminaire. You know what? You could ask all of our 15,000 residents. No one would understand anything about what a luminaire is or what 600 lumens means. We don't have, they've taken out the enforcement mechanism. So you put in a whole bunch of requirements and rules that are not intended to be enforced. So to me, it sounds like a bit of overregulation. I know the people who are recommending it are fervent and believe in it. I don't think it's something we ought to burden the town of Nantucket with all of the challenges to dealing with the infrastructure issues on the island today, to deal with some others. Somebody is going to make a complaint about other people's lightings, and then there's going to be a discussion about it. Well, not supposed to enforce it. I think we don't need that for Nantucket. So that's just my personal view.
Any other comments? Kathy?
Well, for me, it's the bylaw that exists now would stand if nothing replaces it. So that's a very outdated 25-year-old law. It's not current, and it's not the way people light their homes. It has to do with incandescent lighting and so forth, which isn't really what people are using anymore. So this, to me, at least it updates the regulations to bring it to something more modern. And the town did say, please take out the enforcement part because we can't do that, and we can't afford to do that. But it gives a guideline for people if they want to voluntarily comply. So the biggest, I think it's also an embarrassment to the town because they're violating the current bylaw right now, and they have been. The schools are really lit way too high. So that's been really where most of the complaints have come from, people in Mid-Island who have to live near the schools. It's blinding. So it just would replace it with, to really encourage people to use downward facing lights. So I just think it's better than what we have.
I normally would tend to agree with Gary. I'm not a big fan of more regulation. But here, I think I do agree with Kathy that since there was already, there is a regulation on the books, and where so that this is just updating it. But I think more importantly, I think most people, if asked, and everything remaining otherwise the same, enjoy the night lights of the night sky rather of Nantucket. That's really quite special, and anything we can do that is not burdensome, so to speak, to support that, I think is worth doing. So I think with the enforcement taken out, I think it's worth supporting.
Okay, so here are my own views, because I don't see any other, or Ralph, you want to have a comment? Yeah.
Well, I agree with Peter Kahn that, as you know, I oppose the original language of the process because of the crazy linkage with human health based on little science. But as taking that out as a way of raising a standard of behavior, I think it's good. It is, having read it, I don't believe personally that it would be onerous to comply with it. And having removed the regulatory component of it, it becomes a behavioral standard. And I think that's okay. And we probably ought to support it.
Yeah. So I am in Gary's ballpark here. And I took a fairly close look at the wording of this statute, or the bylaw, proposed bylaw. And I don't know if anybody else has looked this closely or not, but the first issue for me was what lights are covered? And the answer is, from my reading in 102-2, which is called applicability, it's all outdoor lighting. And there is no further definition of all outdoor lighting. So, for example, I look at my own situation. I have some rather extensive outdoor roofed porches. Do the lights in the ceiling, which aim down, do they count? They are downward facing lights. I did some renovation last year and put, I think, something 15 or 20 downward facing lights around the house, and most of them, I guess, would be exempt for safety reasons, but they're all downward facing. Do they count? So my first thing is, I think the all outdoor lighting is perhaps overly broad, especially where you have outdoor areas. I don't know, is my roofed but unscreened porch outdoors or indoors under this regulation? I have no clue whatsoever. And so I have a problem with that. And I think, when you look closely, maybe a lot of other people would have a problem with how expansive this is. This is not just directed, as I understand it, at lights that point up to the sky, or lights on a neighbor's house that point toward my house. It's all outdoor lights, period. The second thing, under 102-4, which is the general requirements for all outdoor lighting, there is an overall limit, which says lumen limits, C. This is subparagraph C. All luminaires, lumen limits, and this is my paraphrasing, all luminaires 20,000 lumens per acre. And I have a hard time computing exactly what that means. And does it mean all the downward facing ones, including? Because they're not going to, presumably, maybe if it reflects off the grass or something, it's going to have some effect on the night sky. And so I just think the regulation goes way too far. And the other thing I did is, I said, okay, I'm a consumer, and I went to Amazon, I went to a couple of other lighting sites that have outdoor lighting. And I said, okay, I'm a consumer, and now I'm wanting to buy a luminaire that lights up the portion of the tree that I'm allowed to light under this bylaw. And that limits me, I think, to 250 lumens in power for each one. And of course, you'd have to add them all together and make sure you're not exceeding 20,000, which would be about 48 of them, which would be a lot per acre. It was not easy in today's world to get the lumens data from these websites before ordering. I would say about half of the luminaires had that data listed, and half of them didn't. And so you could pull your hair out. So for these reasons, I think this particular attempt to update the existing imperfect night sky regulations in Nantucket is in and of itself imperfect and needs further work. So I'm against it. Donald Green.
I can see there's going to be a split vote here.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
There's going to be a split vote.
Yeah.
Some people are going to approve it and some people are not going to approve it. So, and we only have 6 people here who can vote. So it's not truly reflective of what our committee is supposed to be. So I think the proper vote is present, to not take a position either way.
That's against it.
Peter,
Yep, Ralph.
isn't there an exclusion for shielded lights?
Yes.
Yes, and so your downward facing lights are by definition shielded and would not be a part of this whole regulation. It's not about those that are inside or inside a porch or inside an overhang that are downward facing and shielded.
So can somebody point me to that exclusion and then tell me whether that exclusion applies to 102-4, which is the overall luminaires per acre limit? You know, I must say that if somebody were paying me to look at it, I would have looked at it a little bit more closely. But in devoting the amount of time I had to devote to it, I did sort of look at how it works. And maybe if there's an exclusion hidden someplace, that's well and good, but ought it to be hidden? And maybe it isn't hidden. Maybe
I know it's excluded. I haven't, I don't remember exactly where. I know that question's been asked several times at the various town boards where it's been reviewed. But I can't find, I'd have to go look to see.
normally, if I were writing this regulation under 102-4, general requirements for all the outdoor lighting, C, lumen limits, I would say, you know, all luminaires 20,000 per acre, except as excluded in paragraphs A, B, C, and D, whatever. And there is no such.
I know there was an exclusion, there was like a holiday exclusion somewhere, like for holiday lighting and stuff like that. I just can't remember.
They all have to be turned off at 11 o'clock at night or something
Yeah.
like that. And it's just,
Right.
it boggles my mind. Yeah, Peter Conn.
Well, I'm sorry, Scott, I think is it Scott who's
Yeah, Scott,
go
yeah,
ahead first?
Scott.
I continue to have a problem with a statute that is not intended to be complied with other than voluntarily. You know, there's the word requirement is in there, but we're saying wink, wink, nudge, nudge. No, you know, this is something good to do, but we don't really intend for people to do it. So that leaving aside all the technical, weaknesses in this, either it is to be complied with or it is not. And there might be a great role for this as a voluntary hortatory model for people to comply with, to give people, the contractors, a modernized version of something that they can endeavor to comply with. But either it is or it isn't. And this sort of midway of it's on the statute books, but not really something that people need to do, I have a great deal of discomfort with. Second thing I would say is I suspect it this problem falls in an 80-20 rule, that 80% of the problem is coming from, 20% of the sources, and probably more extreme. And you start with, if you look at that map that was shown a few weeks ago, it's very clear that it's mid-island, it's the schools, it's that sort of thing. And, maybe that's the place to start if you really care about the substance of the issue. Third part, and remarkably enough, the town is not complying with their own requirements. And that to me would be a great place to start here. But to my mind, this is a good model statute, but I don't think it belongs in the books unless unless the intention is that we're really going to do this. And I think there are plenty of weaknesses in it. And I think the broader view of people would be that this is extensive, invasive, and expensive.
Yeah, Kathy?
Just to pass along some of the discussion that happened at the various town meetings where they discussed this is the town has a history, and I'm not saying it's good or bad, of doing things exactly like this. For example, there is no enforcement of the bicycle helmet law. However, we have one. Because they want to just have it as a law so people know it's there and they're supposed to be doing it, and maybe there's a liability issue with the town's bike paths. I don't know, but there is a pattern in the town of doing that, exactly that. There is no particular intention to enforce it, but it's a law for safety or whatever reason. So I just want to throw that out there. And then they also had her rewrite it to take all of the enforcement out for that particular reason, with the hopes that it would pass the way it is, and then they could improve it as it goes along, because nothing is ever the way it really should be the first time around. So just throwing that out there.
Let me ask this general question then of those of you who've looked at it, because I can't answer it on the spot right here and now, and that is on the enforcement issue. My understanding was that there is enforcement. It's just private enforcement. And so if I'm aggrieved by something my next door neighbor is doing, I have a right to complain and perhaps even sue that next door neighbor based on this statute. Isn't that correct?
Yes, there's a provision specifically that says that at the end of the statute.
Yeah.
I think it's proposed.
It's like part of my generalized problem with this. This is not really just a night sky statute, but we have calling it a night sky statute. We're saying there's no enforcement, but there is private enforcement. And I come from a practice where most of a significant amount of the enforcement in terms of treble damage actions is private enforcement. I think, people are not being straight up, but they really want to get this thing passed. And that's just my opinion. It really not highly relevant, but is somebody want to call a question or continue?
I just want to have I just want to continue the discussion for a minute, Peter. I mean, look, we all know, as particularly those of us who are lawyers, that, the right to sue is pretty universal here. And, you don't need a statute or not to sue on this. And if somebody's light is bothering you, you'll find a cause of action to go after them. The question in my mind, is the regulation as you, Peter, read it, or as others have suggested? And I'd like to take a closer look at it again. And there's no rush here, I don't think, for us to come to a decision today. So I would urge us to take one more session to look at it. But B, I think if we do defeat this, or decide not to defeat it, but decide not to take a position, not to endorse it, I think it is important that we set forth our reasons on this. I do, we're under, a lot of people now are looking at us, which is good. I mean, looking and have heard about us. And I think that night sky and what have you is something that is very popular. I mean, I think, when Scott talks about 80-20, there's another way to look at it. I mean, I understand the position he's taking on 80-20. I mean, but also I bet you 80% of the people, if asked, would, just as a straight up matter, would say, hey, yeah, I like the night sky. I like to be able to go out there and look at it. And so just to make sure that our view is not taken the wrong way, that we don't give a damn about it, I think we need to be in a position to state our reasons at some point here as to what, either to encourage it, and say, look, it's not written well, et cetera, if it was, but let's take it one step at a time. I would suggest we put this off and take a closer look at the wording here to deal with the concerns you have, Peter.
So is there a motion to table?
Yes.
Second, Don, second, yeah. And all those in favor of tabling this to next meeting? Okay, it looks like it's Kathy, I didn't see which way you're voting.
I'm not in favor of tabling it because the select board will be taking this up before we meet again. So if we table it, it doesn't.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
When are they taking it up?
I believe it's on the agenda. I forget which, I think it's think it's next week. Well, it may not be on the agenda yet, but they haven't taken it up, and I think their deadline to do all of the articles is, let's see. I think it is this month. Let me go look, see if I can find that. That's the only reason, is I think it won't matter at that point. Let me go look and see this select board plans for town meeting. Let's see. No.
I don't think we should be taking a position if we don't have we don't have to have complete unanimity. But if we are fairly split on some of these issues, I just don't think we ought to be speaking for the non-voting taxpayers.
Okay. So actually, we have a motion, which I thought everybody voted on, but why don't we just be.
The table.
Motion to table.
Well,
Everybody
but I may
table.
withdraw it if we don't have if there's a, if it doesn't do any good to discuss this after the fact. I mean, so
Can you withdraw after it's been seconded?
I could,
I don't know.
Let's see. March 22nd. And March 29th. March 29th is the last meeting,
okay, well, that will be
because
before.
it goes to the printer on the 31st.
All right, so we would be meeting in 2 weeks, which is what's that? That's before the,
Yeah, so if we meet on the 25th, they have two meetings. They have it on the 22nd to go through, so it says preliminary review and recommendations to the warrant articles, and then they adopt all of them no later than the 29th. So they'll be talking about them on the Wednesday before our meeting, and then finalizing them on the 29th.
all right, I'll keep my motion on and to table it.
I'm sorry.
I'll maintain my motion to table it, yeah, so.
Okay. All those in favor of tabling signify by raising your right hand. So that's 4. Anybody opposed?
Yeah.
1. So it's 4-1.
Where's Bill?
4-2.
Bill's
I'm sorry.
against it.
Okay. So 4-2, the motion carries. And so we will
Reconvene on it.
take this up at the next meeting. And
Kathy and I don't like that. We want it our way.
it's, well, you can have a
Hope a
work-
revote, or
Okay.
Yeah, I
so-
was surprised how much support they got from Civic League and a lot of other places. And that was the one that had the enforcement in it. So I was surprised about that.
that's the 80-20 I was talking about.
Yeah,
Nobody on the Cape, and nobody in anybody has ever passed this before. So, and hardly anyone in the state of Massachusetts has even approved this. So there's nobody.
But yeah, with respect, Gary, I mean, we are in we're 30 miles off to sea. We've got a lot less light interference normally. I mean, our skies are some of the, we're known for our skies as opposed to places on land. So
in America.
yes,
Well, I'll tell you, if this doesn't pass, and if anybody wants to look at the dark sky and it's not dark around your house, just let me know. It's really dark around my house, and I'm in an R20 just across the street from an R1. It's pretty dark out there at night.
maybe my problem is I'm more mid-island, so maybe I'm getting it off the football field or something.
Right, or the hospital. The hospital.
Hospital.
Set up.
Hospital.
Yeah.
Ralph,
Just a comment to Peter Kahn, thinking ahead.
Yeah.
If the committee were not to endorse it, and you felt, Peter, that it was necessary to articulate the reasons why, and if the primary reason was that it's duplicitous because there's no enforcement in it, then that would simply beg the response to put the enforcement back in.
I mean, another way I could see doing this, and then we really do need to move on, is to perhaps approve it, but only with, if I'm correct in the way I'm looking at reading it, only with improved language that solves those problems. I mean, there are a lot of different ways to do this. And that would be, I guess, a non-approval in its current form, but the suggestions for further improvement. Don,
That's why I suggested a present vote.
What does that mean?
Present vote
What's that
means-
mean, though? What's that mean, Don? Present what?
I'm going to tell you what it means. It means that the present rendition of the article is not acceptable, but you're not taking a stand against somebody improving it. That's what a present vote means.
yeah, but we could always say that anyway. We can say that, yeah, we're all in favor of appropriate lighting. We just don't think this is the right answer.
Well, if somebody says, what does the ACNBT think? I think it's a present vote.
Okay,
Make it better.
so
Or
the
get rid of it.
Article 72, the motorized passenger devices bylaw. Does anybody want to move that we support that article or not support the article? Or take no action or take some action? Gary?
As I said at the last meeting, I don't want to have people on skateboards, motorized skateboards, having to go on the highways in Nantucket. And that concerns me about this well-intended, well-meaning rule that would get all of these new e-bikes and motorized skateboards, stuff like that, get them off the bike paths and put them in the middle of the road where the traffic is. We've got enough traffic issues today. It just concerns me that this is well-meaning, but would be a disaster. And I think there would be more injuries as a result of these people on motorized skateboards and e-bikes, stuff like that, in the middle of where the Jeeps and the Land Rovers are running than on the bike path.
So we're sort of having a discussion, but we really need, we could have, if there is no motion, we can still have the discussion. But I would kind of like to focus the discussion in a way that either we're voting on something or having a pleasant discussion. Peter Kahn.
I would move to not endorse this in the sense that I think there's already existing this, if I understand the existing Massachusetts law, you cannot have on the bike path any quote unquote motorized bike or otherwise that goes above 20 miles an hour. 20 or less is acceptable. I think that would deal with Gary's issue, of course. I don't, if you're riding a skateboard above 20 miles an hour, you ought to be on the road. Take your lumps. So I don't think this is something that's really needed. I think again, it's something that we should encourage whatever the town to encourage safety on the bike paths as they but that is something that the state law already takes care of with regard to the speed limit.
Yeah, Don Green.
On the
Oh, that's a motion. Is that a motion? Excuse me. I'm sorry, Don.
Yeah,
Is that
a
a
motion,
motion?
it's a
a
motion not to
second?
endorse. Yeah, not to endorse.
Is there a second for the motion not to endorse? Gary, it's second. Okay. Discussion, Don.
Okay, on the bike path, in my comment that goes past the conservatory down into town, there is a sign that says no motorized vehicles on the bike path.
Well, the answer to that, I think, is that there's a definition of motorized vehicle in Nantucket, which includes some of the things we're talking about and excludes other of the things that we're talking about, so that sign may not be fully explanatory to somebody who does not know what a motorized vehicle is in the state of Massachusetts.
As the motorized skateboard, what's their brake? Is there a brake on that thing?
Yeah.
Your foot.
Yep. No, you put your heel down on something and it slows it down.
Where?
There's a pad.
If you lean backward, there's a rubber pad on the back of it, and it,
All right.
not that I've ever done that.
Yeah. Probably the same as a skateboard.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the sign on the motorized, no motorized vehicles allowed is there's also stop signs on the bike path, and they're not real either. If the bicyclist doesn't stop and comes out in the road and gets hit by a car, it's the car's fault. So
I,
nothing enforceable on those signs.
so, I mean, we could make a comment, but anyway, we have a motion not to recommend, I guess, that this be passed. We have a second. Any further discussion on that motion? And then, so is there all those in favor of the motion not to recommend? So that's 2-4. Anybody opposed?
We lost Bill.
It's Bill. And Don, you have I'm sorry, I didn't catch you.
I vote present.
You're voting present. Okay, so that you give us the quorum. Thank you. So let's go one step further then. Do we want to say anything at first, anything whatsoever, or just it sort of ends here and now? We don't say we voted for or against it, because we have we're to provide advice to the board, and just I don't think we want to have straight out advice that we are against this. So one could say, if you want me to write something to the board, that I'm not sure exactly what to say. It's a really complicated situation. Yeah, Don.
What if you get behind a tractor?
What do you mean?
Sorry?
On a bike path?
Well, people were complaining that if they allow these bicycles that are going slower, that they get upset because now they have to be behind something that's going slow.
I'm
I
not,
mean, life is complicated.
yeah, it is.
and there's no
Scott?
good solution to it.
The comment I would have is it's not about the mode of propulsion, it's about the speed.
Yeah.
Whatever exotic mode of propulsion might be invented, or somebody riding a road bike at 25 miles per hour, the problem is the same. It's not propulsion, it's speed.
Right.
Yeah.
And, back to the enforcement discussion. Well, here's one where, a hortatory rule might be useful. Say 15 miles per hour, or whatever the rule is the maximum on the bike paths. And, the police may choose to or not choose to enforce it, but that's something people should be encouraged to adhere to.
I think that would be the right thing to do. Ralph?
I'm seeking clarification on the vote that just took place.
Yeah.
Was the motion to make a recommendation against, or was the motion just to not make any recommendation?
The latter.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I guess,
It's-
I would
it's-
not have authority to say anything on this anyway.
But that's an interesting, but what Scott just raised is an interesting question. Is there a speed limit now on the bike path?
I think there is a Massachusetts law that limits the speed. It's either 15 or 20 miles an hour.
On bike path? I mean, I know as to the electric bike, but I'm talking generally as to the speed on the bike path. I thought, I must say, I've ridden the bike path obviously many times. I just can't recall. I thought every once in a while, I thought something in the back of my mind says that I've seen a limit, but maybe not. Maybe not. I think Scott's point. I mean, I think it may be a note to the select board suggesting that, hey, it is not the mode of operation, as Scott has properly said. It's the speed issue here, and that we should establish a speed if we don't have one, and whether the police enforce it or not is something else. But it does establish. I think that should be our recommendation if we want to make one.
Yeah, Donna?
Yeah, in our last meeting, I suggested a limit of 10, maybe 15 miles an hour. 20 miles an hour or 25, if you get hit on the bike path, and I do a lot of walking and I do biking, it can do some damage. So I would keep it more on the 10, 15 mile an hour.
Pamela?
So I'm an avid biker and I bike the bike paths every morning about 15 to 20 miles. I will say 10 miles an hour is a little low, even for someone pedaling. The problem, I think, is that when the e-bikes came on, you've got people now e-biking, not paying attention, not
Right.
sort of obeying, share the rules. And there's been a lot of accidents with e-bikes hitting regular bikers, hitting walkers, crashing. So I do think it's more of an e-bike enforcement, like training those people how to observe things and maybe, obviously restricting speed limit, but it could be something like 25, who knows? But, an e-bike hitting you at 25 is very different and they're sensitive, they're heavy, so they can't be stopped as quickly as a normal bike. I'm just saying there's a lot of like what ifs. But I would hate to see all those e-bikes going down Milestone Road. It kind of reminds me of the scooters and the traffic problems that they cause with people, crossing and veering across lanes. So once again, we have like an article that doesn't really look at a lot of options.
Ralph?
The goal of speed limits and all kind of traffic rules is the prevention of major injury. Major injury, they're not about inconvenience. It's an inconvenience to share the bike path with an e-bike, but they're about major injury. So injury depends on momentum, which is not just speed, but as Pamela just said, speed times mass. And the e-bikes are massive. Scooters, not so much, and bikes, not so much. So you would know a big difference if you were hit at 20 miles an hour by an e-bike. You'd have a major orthopedic injury that sends you to the hospital. And if you're hit by a lightweight carbon fiber bike, not so much.
If I'm on it, maybe it would.
I didn't want to go there.
Yeah, I think we're getting into the kind of detail that I agree that there should be a speed limit. But I also think, and I think we mentioned this last time, is that I'm not sure that people understand the rules of the road on this shared, limited shared occupancy facility, amenity that everybody is allowed to use. And as I understand the rules, that the pedestrians have the right of way, period, end of story. And I'm not sure that all the bikers understand it. I don't think the pedestrians do either. So if we were to say something, I don't think we'd specify what the speed limit ought to be, but it might say something like be a reasonable speed limit under the circumstances, and then somebody else is going to have to figure out what that is if that's what they want to adopt, and that the signs need to be, the signs for the bike path usage need to be better than they are now, specifically to perhaps outline very, very briefly who's got the right of way and what the speed limit is. Yeah, Gary.
Why don't we just leave it up to Mike Burns? He's now hired back by the town to figure out all the transportation issues. He's a professional. We're not McKinsey and Group. We don't have to provide consulting services to the select board on issues that are not our specialty. So why don't we leave it to Mike Burns and the town to deal with this?
It's not a bad idea, send it to committee. So I think where we are now is that we're not going to say anything. Is that
Right.
the sense? And but we all have our opinions, and anybody is free to voice their own opinion,
Absolutely.
making it clear that it is their own opinion. Okay, so I think we've basically time committee, time sharing, time interval ownership dwelling. Do we want to take that up at this meeting?
Are you talking about Picasso?
Yeah.
Yes.
Why don't we do that? That's pretty quick and easy, I think.
Well, yes and no. I know somebody. I know somebody who's a principal investor in Picasso. Was one of the guys who started it, and I'd like to have an opportunity, if I missed it, I apologize, but I'd like to take the opportunity to look at the sort of the differences between, because they claim there is a difference between timeshare, timeshare concept, which I'm familiar with, I guess most of us are, and this Picasso position, which is sort of a shared equity. So I would prefer not to deal with it today.
Ralph?
3 out of the 8 shares in that Picasso property already closed. So it's becoming pretty timely.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
don't know if this
the
will
difference
affect
that-
Picasso at all. It would affect future Picassos, as I understand
Right.
it. Yeah.
Right, I think the one thing that confuses me on this is that the delineation seems to be that in the Picasso model, you have a deed to your property. But I have a timeshare from 30 years ago up in Vermont, and I have a deed. So I don't see the difference. And I think it's a gray area there that trying to define it. I think there are a few timeshares still on the island because they were grandfathered in when the bylaw was passed that prohibits timeshares. So that's just some background on that. And I think that if you look at what people are afraid of on the island about corporate ownership and people coming in that are not really tied to the community, they're coming in and out like you have that kind of situation. That's a fear that people have, and that's probably why this bylaw actually was snuck in under the town put it in like the last day they could put in their own town warrant article to make it classified like a timeshare and not be permitted. So that's all I know about it. Just throwing that out there.
I think it'd be helpful to look. I mean, I don't know where I come out on it, but I sort of like to have something to look at and to sort of understand what we're really talking about. So we ought to gather some material on it. I don't think it takes that long to do. I mean, I have one question is, okay, so under Picasso, if you're a 1/8 owner, does that mean that you can rent out your property for that 1/8 period that you quote unquote own it? I have no idea what.
Picasso says that all of the owners have to agree for any
so-
one owner to do it.
Yeah, which by the way is interesting because I mean I must say I've talked to people on island, friends who live in effectively gated communities on island, and their position on the STRs is, hey, look, we don't allow them in our quote unquote community. We don't allow them, period. And so that these, it's that makes a difference as to whether or not the community has can vote on it or not.
I think there's an issue also. If something goes wrong, who do you, I wouldn't say sue, but who do you address? Because with 8 different owners, and as you said, Peter Kahn, that they all have to agree, then how does somebody address an issue? And that's, I think, part of the problem with Picasso. And they've had issues all over the country.
Well, why don't we see if can we gather? Why don't we gather something? I don't know. Can we gather some information? I'm happy to.
It's online. There's information online. They're out of San Francisco. You would know that, right? They're out of San Francisco and they've had issues. So it is available. Public
I'd like to take a
information
look
is
at
available.
so I'd like to take a look at that before we.
So did people want to take this up today or at a future meeting?
You can do it at a future meeting. I'm fine.
So our homework is to go read about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, what
Okay.
resources do we have to read? I would like to be directed specifically.
Well, we have the language of the bylaw. That would be the first and most important thing to read.
That's already that was in the agenda.
Right, I've already
Already.
read that, but Peter Kahn is asking for more than that.
It's online. At least some of the information is online to start with.
Yeah.
What, to
But
just
I
Google
guess
it?
There's
Yeah,
also
Google it.
another issue is, I don't know that Picasso is the only form of this kind of ownership
Right.
that needs to be considered in figuring out whether the language of the bylaw, it could be that it can be done in other ways under the language, under the existing situation. Presumably what happened here, I have no idea, is that everybody thought these were prohibited by the timeshare bylaw. And the town council probably became convinced that the language in the timeshare bylaw was not broad enough to prohibit this form
Well,
of.
somebody brought a zoning complaint against Picasso.
Yep.
So a neighbor put it through the zoning board of appeals process. And the zoning board realized that they couldn't say it was illegal because it doesn't specifically say fractional ownership. So when that happened, that's when town council put in the bylaw at the last minute. So that's what precipitated that.
Is there an opinion of council that we can look at?
For that, it should be under the planning board, zoning board minutes. I don't know when that happened. Probably in the last 2 months, I guess, but it probably is somewhere in the annals of the planning board.
You're the expert in digging this stuff out. I hate to put any burden on you, but if you could, I'm not asking you necessarily, but if you could, that would be great. I think that would be valuable to see what they're citing.
Okay,
Gary, yes.
I don't think we should take this up. There is overwhelming support on the island for a ban on these kind of programs. The select board is against it. The annual town meeting will vote it down, will approve the ban. The town is coming up with its own proposal to make sure that the annual town meeting declares these to be invalid. So why would we, the advisory committee for non-voting taxpayers, even consider taking a different position than a position that is so clearly felt by most of the people on the island? They're terrified of these things. I don't think it's our business to get into this thing. There's a very strong support for what the town is trying to do, is to close a loophole that they felt might be existent. What are we wasting our time doing it for?
I think that's a good point.
So why is it on the agenda? Why is
on
it
the other hand, all of these people would be non-voting taxpayers that would buy into them, so.
They don't exist yet.
3 of them.
They're not our clients. They're not our clients.
Okay, so
Pamela had
So
some.
actually, they do exist right now, and there's more than Picasso out there. There's another group called like Luxury Lifestyle or something, and there's a number of homes right now in the real estate listings in Nantucket that are being advertised that each owner pays like 1.2 million, and there will be 3 owners on the property. So there's a few things brewing out there right now, and I'm sure that's what's sparking the interest in coming up with a solution.
yeah, Scott,
I agree with the comment on, where the town seems to be headed on this, but I would just note there are a whole variety of other ways of doing this, including vacation clubs, things that don't involve the nature of the legal ownership, right to use arrangements, timeshares, some are deeded, some are right to use. It's not the legal form of it that's the issue, it's the use. And I think the town's probably well aware of that, but nobody should get hung up on whether it's deeded or not.
Donna, you had a point.
Oh, I was just going to say that if we do discuss it on our next meeting, that's great. And my comment would be, if we support it, support what the town is doing, then I think we should note that. If we disagree, then I think we should be silent.
So we have, it's on the agenda. There is no motion that I'm aware of right now to do one thing or the other with it. And we have discussed it. Does anybody want to make a motion to either approve it, reject it, table it? Okay, should we have a motion to, well, when should we meet next?
I thought we said there's a meeting. Was it the 20? We talked about 25th, is it? I'm trying to see here.
Let's see, I don't have my calendar here. Do we already have a scheduled meeting?
No.
Should be the
Oh,
25th if it's every 2 weeks.
yeah, that, I've already, I mean, I put it into the Zoom, but we haven't,
Okay.
I haven't picked it. Yeah, 25th will be the next one if we have it in 2 weeks. I did find the zoning board of appeals thing on this.
Just, can you circulate that just for kicks? I mean, at least, we had, just be educated.
Okay,
Okay, so we'll have, we have a meeting scheduled for the 25th. I guess the question will be, we'll have presumably something more on short-term rentals by then.
Yes.
I'm just questioning as to, do we need to have a meeting on the 25th? Are there any other issues that we should be discussing at this point? Or is it necessary to have a meeting on the 25th?
well, if we're supposed to be giving Peter feedback on what we think, like he should be saying at these meetings, then to have them right before the short-term rental work group makes sense.
Yeah,
And-
we should have that. We should, hopefully we'll have some data. I guess when are we getting the data?
I think the 28th, I don't think we'll have it because we're not going to have it this week.
All right, so then
But
maybe
we can
just put
also talk about the data that I'm going to send out. You can look at that. And Article 40.
So also on the data that you're going to send out, Kathy, I'm sort of concerned about the public meeting laws. And are you able to send it to us and then also post it, with the next agenda as something that everybody's seen and, had the opportunity to
Yes,
consider?
it's publicly available. It's
Okay.
public. There's no
I think
reason.
we should handle it that way. Send it out, and then we'll also post the fact that this has been circulated to the committee and
Put it
anybody.
in the minutes. She can put it in the minutes.
Yeah,
Right. So we also have the lighting thing because we tabled it. Does that mean we don't bring it up again next time?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. That's wishful thinking on my part. We have the lighting thing, the bright ideas, and I'll. If somebody reads it and can find me these exceptions, clear exceptions, send it to me. I will endeavor to look again even more carefully to see if I can find these exceptions. I know there's something about straitjacketed lighting or whatever they call it, the shielded lighting, but I'm just not sure that it's clear that or clear enough to somebody like me that you take that out of the calculations and equations for these other points in the law. Good. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Everybody in favor, raise the right hand, or any hand they care to raise. Okay. So we're adjourned. Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's attention, and it's helping me understand things to hear all the different points of view, which is great. Thanks. Have a good week or 2 weeks.
Right, take care.
Bye-bye.